To me, the Arctic is a landscape full of bliss and beauty, day or night, winter or summer. It's such an innocence in nature up there. It's a calm harmony in nature, as if the first morning of the first day.
The light can be like diamond dust in the Arctic because it's so cold. There's no moisture in the atmosphere. I'm terrible in the cold. When it's 3 degrees and I'm in Yorkshire and it's wet, I shiver and chatter. But in the Arctic it can be minus 35 and you feel fine. But what does happen is you have these swirling winds of diamond dust. So you get these rainbows refracting everywhere. It's a very hypnotic, mesmeric kind of experience. It holds you. It also cleans your plate somehow. Your visual sense gets kind of sharpened somehow by the infinite quality of the space.
In the ocean, which is minus 1 degree or even colder, there were these veils of green plankton, and they had formed together in colonies, and it looks like leaves of trees waving around under the sea ice. And a landscape that you would think was barren and cold was nothing like it. It's an explosion of color.
People there have their own timing, the feel of time, and the time goes completely different than in the city or somewhere else in the south. It's more of the monotonous, but at the same time, you have a feeling of time being long, you know? Here it's like time goes so fast, you're always on a rush, but there it's just like you have time to think, if you want to get in contact with yourself somehow, and just to relax, and because nothing catches your eye, you know, in the landscape. It's so empty that I think in our world, our visually our brain get cluttered from all the, you know, this bright flashes and advertisement and things, and there's complete emptiness.
To me, the Arctic is a landscape full of sound, but deep sounds and high sounds. No sound in the middle spectrum. There are deep rumble, there are high frequency sounds of ice melting, and then there's this immense silence in between.
And that is why you need to have your own interpretation of this, because it's so plain. It's like a sheet of white paper, you know. And when you're in the emptiness, then your imagination starts to work in a different way. It's more subtle, but then you start to see beauty in the smaller things. Like if you look in tundra, it's there. You think it's empty, but if you look down, there's whole like little world of there are trees, but the trees are really small.
It's light, yet it's very heavy. You can breathe, but it's pressuring on your chest. I was on the ice fjord recording with a hydrophone, underwater microphone, 20 meters below the surface. And you could hear the ice falling into the water at a huge radius that you couldn't always hear through the air because that was silent. But you hear it all down there as a huge animal below you.
To me, the Arctic is a planetary barometer of climate change. And the predictions were made a good while back, more than 20 years now, that we would see the first effects of climate change in those northern regions. And it's happened on a scale that I don't think we could ever have dreamed of in our worst nightmares.
To me, the Arctic is like the opposite way of life and landscape and everything I know from where I live here. One reason I went was to sort of get away from that civilization that I know and get off the grid, if you like, get away from internet and electricity and everything. And I had to go quite a way up north to Greenland to find that.
The Arctic tells us that something is changing at an extraordinary pace. It tells us that we are deeply implicated in this change. It also tells us that we're very bad at predicting. We know that the climate is shifting, but we don't know what the effects of this will be.
I never thought I'd end up in a place like this. I always wanted to go to New York, and then I lived there for 2 years, and I really noticed that it wasn't good for me. Like, it really compromised, you know, my concentration span, and you know, I was kind of stressed out all the time.
It was really important to me and really humbling in a way to find that whatever I kind of know and can do is so relative and fairly useless up there probably, and the whole notion of being an artist is probably a whole different one up there anyway. And it really sort of knocks you back to your human basic skills and capacities.
Freud once said, you know, chance only strikes the attentive mind, and that's the way I try to make art. You know, I just try to be ready in a way when an idea comes up, but for that you need a very kind of blank, bored mindset. And I think a lot of great ideas come from that. You know, I think Einstein invented the quantum theory while he was going in a tram somewhere, just kind of staring out the window. I think, you know, you really need this moments where your brain doesn't really work, let's say, to kind of see things from a different angle.
And that, I think, the Arctic can do to you in sound, to make you listen and to actually use your senses actively to the very finest delicate detail. Really listen within yourself as well.
But generally we have at the back of our mind an uneasy feeling that something's going wrong. It's as if we're a 6-year-old boy and we, while the grown-ups were not looking, crept behind the wheel of a very complicated machine like a combine harvester or a car or a jet, and pulled a few levers for our own pleasure, and then it's starting to move and we don't know how to stop it, how to direct it, how to move it. Having said all this, you know, it is one of the most beautiful places on earth I've ever been.
In the Arctic, it's more like the dawn of a creation. It's much, if I feel close to divinity, it must be in the Arctic. It's so lovely there.
The addiction is quite powerful. I found myself having to return